Enigma is one of the newest heroes out of Part the Mistveil. She follows in a lineage of other powerful illusionists such as Prism and Dromai. So, how does she stack up compared to these powerhouses, and is she able to differentiate herself from Prism Awakener of Soul? So first of all, what does Enigma do? She is a Mystic Illusionist. Mystic is a new talent in the game. She has 4 intellect and 40 life. Your first Spectral Shield attack each turn costs 1 less to activate, and once per turn instant you can pay 3 Chi to create a Spectral Shield token, and it enters with a +1 counter on it. Chi is a new type of resource card that we've also gained in the set. Some of the cards in the set flip over and then they create still regular resources, but then they are considered Chi for cards that care about you specifically pitching Chi. Now, the first half of her ability of the discount on your first Spectral Shield attack is really important, especially with her brand new weapon, since it costs 1 to attack with that, meaning if you're using her new weapon Cosmo, your first weapon attack every turn is free. That being said, what does her new weapon do? Cosmo's Scroll of Ancestral Tapestry. During your turn, auras you control with ward are weapons with base attack equal to their ward, and once per turn you can pay 1 to attack with them. On top of that, your aura attacks with 1 or more +1 counters get go again. The wording on this is really important on what it allows you to actually attack with. It does not work with the Spectra auras that we got back during Everfest. This is going to be a common pattern that you'll notice with a lot of the new cards. A lot of the wording on the new cards is such that they don't really synergize very well with the Spectra auras. There's an obvious design choice here where they're really trying to push you away from playing these Spectra cards, as they are not only anti-synergy with some of your cards, but they physically don't even attack with your weapon. So if you're going to choose to play them, you're going to have to jump through some hoops to actually get value out of them. And I actually really like this. I think this was a really elegant way of pushing people away from doing that without just like banning the cards, because I know Spectra has been a very polarizing mechanic for a lot of people, and a lot of people do not like playing against it. That being said, if you still, like me, really want to play with these, you still have that option. You can just choose to use one of the older weapons like Iris of Reality and Reality Refractor. So now that we understand what Enigma does, what is her core gameplay loop? So Enigma, much like our previous illusionist, is trying to establish some sort of board state, but in her case, she's trying to do that with auras that have ward on them. From there, there's a number of different ways you can try to navigate the game. You can either try to snowball a board with multiple of your ward auras, or maybe you just let them die and reestablish new ones every turn and just get your value on defense out of them. Enigma really feels like she's somewhere between Monarch, Prism, and Dromai in what she's trying to do. Like Prism, she's an instant speed aura deck. But like Dromai, she's much closer to how Dromai would operate on a turn-to-turn basis and how the value was kind of calculated in her stuff, because she would usually get half of her value on offense and then the other half on defense, but then you had the upside where if your dragons didn't die, you could get value on offense multiple times in a row with them. So it's safe to say that Enigma is trying to fill the shoes left behind by these previously rotated illusionists. Before talking about Enigma's place in the current metagame, I think it's important to look back at where previous illusionists' places in the metagame was on release. When you look back at when Monarch, Prism, and Dromai were legal at the same time, during this period, there was basically no reason to play Dromai, because they did a very similar thing to each other, but Prism did it slightly better. When New Prism came out, she didn't see play either, but for different reasons than Dromai didn't see play back during that previous era. That was because of how cursed the matchup was of Dromai versus New Prism. So we're in the same place again, where we have Prism and another illusionist legal in the same format. So how do they compare against each other, and where does their matchup look like into each other? I do think it's a little early to comment on just like how that matchup's going to play out, but based on my initial impressions, it's not going to be as cursed as it was as Dromai versus Prism Awakener of Soul. I think it's very likely we're going to see both illusionists coexist in the format for once, opposed to one pushing the other out completely until the first one rotates. Likewise, I think it's a little too early to say confidently how strong Enigma is going to be, but based off of what I've seen so far, I think she's pretty good. She doesn't strike me as having similar problems to what Dromai and Prism Awakener of Soul had on release, where both decks felt like they were missing something to function. Enigma, she works out of the box. Solving what goes in the box, though, that's going to take a bit since she's got a deep card pool with a lot of different ways to build her. I personally, though, am looking forward to working on the deck since she feels like one of the most brewable decks that I've seen in Fab ever, if not for a long time. And that's an aspect of Fab that's been kind of missing for me. I like deck brewing, and a lot of decks in Fab feel like they not are completely solved out of the box, but you can get a good percentage of the way there just on the first week of looking at a deck and kind of looking at the cards and figuring out what belongs in the deck. Like, you can probably build a 60 card core in the first like week or two, and the deck's gonna function pretty well. Enigma does not strike me as that. I'm still finding new ways to build the deck and different strategies that can and cannot work with the deck. It's a very deep deck, and I personally really enjoy that. The math of what you're doing in Enigma is fairly good, and you have the upside of snowballing if your opponent can't clear your board. She does have some weaknesses, though, that need addressing in deck building, though, such as cards with the text "damage can't be prevented," or decks that are able to present damage in hard to block ways or hard to like deal with packages, such as lots of small amounts of damage that you can't profitably block, and it's just more damage than you have cards to block with. One demerit to her, for me personally, is I feel like she's missing something that both Dromai and OG Prism had. Both of these heroes forced your opponent to play the game in a way that was typically outside of how they normally played the game. What do I mean by that? Most decks have like a core strategy of how they're trying to play the game. For example, maybe you're trying to block with 2 cards and have an efficient 2-card hand, or maybe you just like no blocks, push your whole hand at your opponent, or maybe you just throw like one really big tall attack at your opponent. Dromai and Prism would throw a wrench in your plans by presenting these permanents that you just can't ignore. You have to get these off the table in most matchups. They will accrue too much value if you just let them sit there. So it changes kind of how you're going to be thinking about your turns, about your hands, about like where your attacks should be going, and it forces a lot of decision making on the opponent that they're not normally making in other matchups, pushing them out of their comfort zone. And you would gain a lot of equity out of this in a lot of your matchups, because typically you'd have like a round or two during a tournament where your opponent would make a mistake on one of those decisions and it would cause a game to just snowball out of control. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing, but that is a demerit that she has. She does not have that same ability to just like, oops, you made a mistake, game over. Why is that, though? The big reason is you're just playing things with Ward. There's no, I'm going to attack this instead. It's just, oh, you have Ward on the table, so my game plan is still push the most efficient damage into your face, because that was already my plan. You having Ward doesn't change what I'm doing at all. I'm still just gonna punch you in the mouth and hope it's good enough. There are some slight changes that can happen from that, like, oh, maybe I should not take this low damage turn and play for a big damage turn because I need to make sure I actually get through all of your ward. There's like some little decisions like that, but it's not as vastly different as it was with Prism and Dromai in the past. That being said, I'm really looking forward to spending some more time working on Enigma and trying to crack her. If you want to follow me on my journey, subscribe to the channel. I'm going to have some more updates on Enigma over the next couple weeks. I have a couple videos that I'm working on right now, such as I'm working on a tier list of just kind of ranking my initial impressions of all the different ward cards, because I know that's a question that I've been getting from a lot of people. Which of these auras are actually good in the deck? Obviously, I have a couple deck profiles in the works, and I'm also working on one of like how I'm kind of thinking about the deck right now as far as deck building goes, and like the thought process I'm going through as I'm doing my card evaluation and everything. If I've already made these videos by the time you're watching them, there'll probably be something here for you to click on. Other than that, though, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you guys. Make sure you subscribe. Peace, YouTube.